my little summons, welcome to a new video. My name is Velky and today I have a very exciting topic for you guys. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a comment in the comment section below on topics you want me to talk about in the future. We have quite a list already, but I think we can always expand it, and these will be worked out into videos in the upcoming weeks. So the more the merrier. But anyway, for the ones that are celebrating Christmas, I hope you have a lovely Christmas so far. For the ones that are not celebrating it or currently do not have anyone to celebrate it with and you have some free time, feel free to come by on twitch.tv/Velky. I'm currently celebrating Christmas on my streams, and you can come by and say hi, and we do a bunch of fun events together. So it'd be awesome to see you there. And also make sure to check out my Discord at discord.gg/Velky so you don't miss out on any new uploads or notifications regarding my content. And without further ado, it's time to go into today's topic. To start off, we're talking about gender identity / my gender identity, or how I got to my identity as of today, because a lot of things have changed, a lot of things I've talked about and thought about, and they have been extremely interesting. I thought I'd share them with you. I don't really know how great I am at giving advice when it comes to gender identity specifically. Gender identity is really something that takes time to understand in a way. I think it is something that you would have to discover and explore for yourself before you understand where you exactly fit in when it comes to certain specific gender identities. And I'd like to start off with saying that similarly to how femboys technically have a way of identifying themselves, it doesn't necessarily mean that I think you need to fit every single requirement from a specific label. And that's something that I feel like I had to learn, because otherwise I would have a really hard time trying to understand myself and where I would be standing in the spectrum. This is not really something I thought about a lot until kind of like the start of this year and maybe a little bit of last year. I know I've made a video about it in the past. You can check it out right here, where someone asked me about whether I would still want to be born as a boy or a girl, for example, or that I even mentioned as a hint at the time that I might be gender fluid. I think I'm recently bordering a little bit more on the gender fluid side than on being a male. I'm kind of okay with either. Now you might be asking yourself, how did you get to that conclusion? How did you figure this out? Let me explain. At the beginning of this year, and especially like kind of like last year a little bit, I had moments where I felt like that the generic idea of what masculinity is like is not something that I really fit in, and I also think that the way I act isn't necessarily quote-unquote manly. I feel like in some cases female / feminine side of things fits me a lot better. I don't experience any gender dysphoria, mind you. I think that overall I look pretty androgynous. I feel pretty androgynous. There is not really anything maybe besides my voice that would necessarily give it away that I'm a guy, quote-unquote, especially if I dress in a specific way. A lot of people tend to confuse me for a girl before they hear my voice, or some people even confuse me as a girl even if they hear my voice. It's a very interesting lifestyle I'm living. But I also think one of the reasons why most of us, or a lot of us, suffer from the idea of like not really understanding where we fit in the world, if that comes to like the gender expression, it comes down to the fact that I believe gender normativity of what a man or woman should be like is causing problems for some of us to understand, hey, maybe this whole societal pressure that's being put on me about what I should be like as a man is just simply not fitting me, and it's just not who I am. And it's the same thing for women too. It's the exact same thing where they feel like, hey, this entire normality of what a woman should be like just doesn't fit me. And I think that the pressure from society causes us also to think and feel that we just don't belong, and we want to change ourselves in order to find a way to belong without being judged by society for being ourselves. And a lot of people obviously have the mindset of like, oh, I want to be this because that's what I'm more comfortable with. This is the person I am, and that's totally valid. Everyone has their own freedom of self-expression and also gender expression to let people know where they fit in. And of course, when we talk about gender dysphoria in this case, I also believe that this also has an impact on that in one way or another, and it's only one of the many reasons, because gender dysphoria is extremely complex. But in this case, I'd like to pin in on this because maybe for some of you guys that are suffering from gender dysphoria, this could be one of the reasons why you're going through it right now, and it's maybe something you want to think about. Of course, there's different reasons. You can Google the reasons on why gender dysphoria happens and to do some research about it, but that's also like basically my statement. I think this is one of the reasons why it's happening to some of us. Sometimes it can also be other factors, but I don't really know anything about those factors, so I don't really want to talk about those because I have no idea, and I don't want to talk about things that I feel like I have no idea what I'm saying. But anyway, I think a lot of people, when femboys are femboys, right? And I'm sure some of you femboys have had this before, that people would call you an egg. I know it is very common that for people to go down the fanboy pipeline and some of them turn trans, and that's totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the overgeneralization of something that I feel like should not be defined as its standard. Like, just because one person becomes a femboy doesn't necessarily mean they have to become trans or transition or have a different gender identity. Some people can just be a femboy and they just want to be feminine guys and call it a day, you know, and that's where we should leave it at usually. Unless they want to like deliberately point out that they might be trans, and that's totally okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think we shouldn't be the ones defining what someone is. I think that's someone else's own right to define themselves what they are or what they want to identify as. I think that's totally fair. So with that being said, I've been trying to figure out myself for the past 1 or 2 years. For the start of this year, I've been thinking a lot about the questions that people have asked me. Some people ask me stuff like, oh, are you trans by any chance? Or, you know, have you ever thought about it? Have you ever thought about taking HRT to feel more comfortable as a femboy, or even in some rare cases to transition? In my cases, I've always questioned myself for many, many months to think about these things, because I'm like, oh, maybe they're interesting. Maybe I'll look into that. And I've looked up a lot of videos. I've read a bunch of things. I've been trying to figure out, where do I really fit in here? Because am I really traditionally a cis male, or is there more to it? And so I started looking around on the internet. I started browsing videos. I started browsing articles. I started understanding it more and more, and seeing that to a certain extent, and also people in my chat have mentioned to me that I might be gender fluid, or maybe in some cases non-binary. I think gender fluidity falls under the non-binary umbrella. They go pretty much like in similar ways. When it comes to my gender fluidity, I've noticed that over the course of the year that I had moments where I didn't necessarily feel extremely masculine. I'm not saying that I don't feel comfortable in my body, because my body, like I mentioned before, is extremely androgynous. So I feel pretty comfortable in my body, but I didn't feel like manly. You know what I mean? I saw myself and I was like, I don't really feel like a man today. I don't know. The characteristics of what a man should be like and the things they should be doing, I don't really vibe with that today. Instead, I felt more, you know, feminine. The feminine aesthetics, the feminine vibe. I wouldn't say like a full woman, but definitely more woman coded than man coded at the time. And that changed the way how I acted sometimes. That changed the way how I spoke sometimes. Not drastically. It has some minor differences here and there that definitely shift where I would identify as, so to say. And that's essentially like how I kind of like started thinking about it. These little small moments where I felt like I wasn't exactly the same as I always am. And of course, that's a person, that's personality, and things can change. But for me, I go back. I just realized this is an extremely difficult topic to talk about, because I'm thinking to myself, how am I supposed to explain this to people that have no idea what it's like or what it is? For me, it's a little bit interesting because it's not necessarily the body type, strictly more struck on masculinity slash femininity, right? Like, I have some days where I feel extremely feminine. There's not a single like ounce of masculinity in me, right? And some days I feel extremely masculine and there's like no femininity in me at all. And some days I have both. Some days I have a bit of masculinity and more femininity. I think I like to describe it this way the most, because for me, it's not so much about my body. It can just change from whenever. Some people experience gender fluidity as in like a sudden change. So within a span of a minute, they will feel extremely masculine to suddenly extremely feminine. And this can last for maybe a week and then suddenly switch off again, right? For some people, it could be a long-term and a small change over a long course of time. So some people, for example, switch from a masculine to a feminine more side over a course of a week. And then sometimes after a day, they switch back again. It could be a gradual change to becoming a bit more feminine. And then suddenly out of nowhere, boom, I'm like masculine, or I feel masculine again. And then your entire just mindset just changes. And that can totally happen too. These standards that are being put on me by like society to what each gender should be like, both don't really fit me all the time. And that makes my entire identity also extremely fluid just based on how I feel and think. Not saying necessarily that just because I feel more on the feminine side, I'd be like, okay, now I'm a woman, guys, so you should, you know, refer to me as a woman. That's not the case necessarily. I don't know. It is extremely dynamic, fluctuative, difficult to really put into words, but that's how I have discovered it over the past course of months. I've been told by people that around me, like, hey, you might be gender fluid, you might look more into that. And I looked into it myself and I was like, hey, this sounds like me. Yeah, definitely. But usually I don't really tell people about this. It doesn't really matter to me if people know or not. It doesn't hurt me if people know or not. It doesn't bother me if people say I'm a girl or a guy and they get it wrong. For some people, this is completely different and they see it differently as well. But this is how I see it. This is how I feel about it. And I feel extremely valid with the way I am. People accept me as gender fluid. It is extremely dynamic. It is different for everyone. everyone else. This is how I like to explain it, how I think sometimes. And even then, I don't think I necessarily explain it really well because it is extremely complicated to understand and grasp and put your own mindset into words. For you to really understand what it's like, you'd have to be there. You know what I mean? You have to understand what I think and how I experience things for you to understand exactly what goes through my mind and why this is the way I feel. Sorry if this entire video is extremely vague and arbitrary because of the fact that it's extremely difficult to put your gender identity into words, but I think it's an extremely interesting topic to talk about because I think a lot of people struggle with the sense of gender identity and they don't really know where to go. I think a lot of people tend to struggle with not really knowing exactly where they stand under the umbrella of different gender identity terms. And then gender fluidity kind of comes in at depending on how you see it, right? It's a very fluctuative label. I mean, it's called goddamn gender fluid, but there's so many different labels that could fit you and you don't have to like read through all of them necessarily. And ultimately, I don't think it really hurts too much to just kind of like look into them and see maybe there is like something in there that would describe you better when it comes to self-expression and identity. There's a lot more going on in people than just these two binary like, oh, this is a man, this woman, and that's it. But yeah, most of the time, like I said, I do feel male oriented and I'm totally fine with that. And I have some periods of time where I'm not, and that's totally okay too, because ultimately nothing really changes in my content or me. Sometimes it changes the way I talk, sometimes it changes the way I act, but it's not like it's a whole different like personality or something like that. It's still me at the end of the day. And I think that's what it comes down to. The label shouldn't necessarily change so much about what you already are. It simply is describing what you have always been. I have found this part of myself that I normally wouldn't have found if I didn't bother too much in looking into it. I would have just called myself a guy and called it a day, right? So if people are confused or they don't really know what to do with this information, I mean, just call me a guy, refer to me as he, and just, you know, move on. You don't have to call me anything different. You don't have to do anything different. I think that is extremely unfair to expect from someone when the entire idea of gender fluidity is just kind of like extremely chaotic sometimes. Switches can happen sudden and you never really know the right answer because ultimately, sometimes I don't even know the fucking right answer. So when it comes to stuff like that, yeah, please do refer to me whatever the fuck you want. I really don't care. That is technically what it comes down to when it comes to my gender identity journey. I have gone over this whole year trying to figure out what certain things make me click so I can understand myself better. I had to understand why I didn't necessarily feel comfortable with being overly masculine or just strictly masculine. I had to understand to myself why I sometimes had moments where I didn't feel feminine at all, where I didn't feel like dressing up, where I didn't feel like the femboy self I am. Sometimes I just don't feel like that. That's because I think mainly due to my gender fluidity shifting things around from time to time. And that's not a problem at all. It's just me. I think if you have like been figuring things out about yourself this past year, you've been like, hey, maybe there's certain characteristics that are hinting towards you. Look for a couple of ones that you think you feel attached to that identity term and then just go from there and try things out, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. You don't really know what you are or what you feel like until you try it. Just because you don't experience it like me doesn't necessarily mean you're not part of it though. You know what I mean? Just because you look at my videos and you think to myself, oh, well, I mean, this doesn't really apply to me. Well, maybe something else about the term applies to you, but you have no idea what it necessarily is because I don't necessarily show off that characteristic when it comes to that specific identity type. But yeah, with that being said, I hope you guys found this in some way interesting. My word of advice to you is if you want to discover identity for yourself, look up the identities, watch YouTube videos about where people go in depth about like what this gender identity is, because ultimately I am not an expert in this. I simply found something that happens to fit me and I rolled with it. If you feel like that, you know, at sometimes you don't necessarily fit with everything and there's something more to you that you would like to discover, check out the terms. There's a bunch of different like quote-unquote non-binary / trans terms that definitely might fit you. If you are comfortable with what you are, who you are, what you identify as at the moment, there's no reason to change it. And maybe listening to my story made you understand it a little bit more, or maybe there's something else about it. Maybe you want to discover that as well. Maybe you're non-binary, maybe you're trans femme. That can differ per person, that can differ per experiences. So honestly, explore for yourself and figure it out. It's the beauty of life. The beauty of trying to discover yourself is to be able to find these terms that fit you the best. Set your own boundaries on what you think is okay and isn't. Hopefully this video has helped you try and figure out some more things about yourself and maybe some things that you started to think about. Leave a comment. Feel free to let me know what you thought about this video and if it has made you think about things. And everyone's stories is valid in their own way. So if you have any interesting like identity, gender related stuff that you'd like to leave in the comments, feel free to drop it down. Maybe I'll react to it. Maybe I'll read through your comments. Maybe maybe you can make me understand myself even better. And with that being said, a couple of really quick announcements. I will probably be streaming on Twitch, so you can check me out on twitch.tv/velkyan. And if you want to hear more of my yapping, I will be there as well. Make sure to also join my Discord at discord.gg/velky, because I'm currently doing a gift review event where I'll be looking at the gifts that you have received this year. It's not exclusive to just Christmas. Any gift you received this year, you can send a picture to me or a video, and I'll be reacting to it on stream, which you should totally check out. If it's the 28th today and you're watching this on the 20th of December, there's a pretty good chance that the stream is happening right now. Still, feel free to join the Discord so you stay up to date, so you don't miss out on these events, right? We're gonna do a bunch of fun events throughout the year of 2026, so if you want to participate in any of the cool events that we do in 2026, you'll always be notified and always be the first to be able to join these events. I hope you guys found this video somewhat informative. I'm sorry if it was very vague and arbitrary, like mentioned before. It is extremely difficult to put this into words at times and make it understandable. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Leave a like and subscribe. If you're new here, feel free to leave down a comment of your own experiences or stories you would like to share, or maybe even topics you want me to talk about in future videos. And thank you guys so much for the Patreon and also YouTube members for both my main channel and my Patreon. You can check it out in the description as well. But yeah, thank you guys so much for checking all those links out. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope my lovely sunbuns have an amazing day. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye. Love you guys. Bye-bye. Oh shit, I have a mic.